Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran al-Durr, the Juz of Quran spares. Reading still from Surah As-Saffat, and we have reached, like in this session, inshallah, we'll begin with the story of Nuh alayhi salam. And of course, these stories, and when they are mentioned in more than one place, you'll have something that is most probably not mentioned elsewhere. And we shall read inshallah. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد نادانا نوح فلنعم المجيبون. Indeed, Noah cried out to us, and how excellent are we in responding. ونجيناه وأهله من الكرب العظيم. We delivered him and his family from great distress. Meaning here, the believers in his family, not all of them. Elsewhere in the Qur'an, one of the children of, for example, one of the children of Nuh alayhi salam, of Prophet Noah, chose to resort to a high mountain when the water started rising. His father, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, was pleading with him to hop into the ark. The father knows that on that day no one outside the ark will survive. But that's it. There was no way. You try to convince, but some people just simply resort to the material realm in the absolute sense, and that was a loss. Ya bunay, when it is mentioned in the Quran, more than one context, but in the context of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Ya bunay yarkam ma'ana, ride with us, take the ark. His wife too. At any rate, it's about the believers in his family. وَجَعَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمُ الْبَاقِينَ, and made his descendants the sole survivors. The biblical narrative, if you talk about the names Shem, Ham, and Japheth, it's problematic in the sense of how it's problematic really in more than one respect. First of all, Prophet Noah, peace upon him, gets drunk. Number two, he was naked. Number three, all these are very, very problematic things. The prophets do not really do these things. Number three, the child who discovered him naked told his two brothers, and they walked backward to cover him. And when he woke up from his hangover, from his drunkenness, and realized what happened, he cursed his son who discovered him like this, which is absolutely not fair. So I'm just talking about the logic of people who subscribe to this story. So he gets drunk, he gets naked, and then he curses and deprives of inheritance. And he and his offspring will become servants to the others. And then we are left with two, and only one inherits. In the Quran, it's very clear. All the children will inherit, boys and girls. للرجال نصيب مما ترك الوالدين والأقربون وللنساء نصيب مما ترك الوالدين والأقربون مما قل منه وكثر. Men, the males, have a share of what parents and relatives leave behind after their death, and women have shares of what the parents and relatives leave behind, regardless whether it's little or plenty. And there are more details, of course, in inheritance. But it's the descendants of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, وَجَعَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمُ الْبَاقِينَ. So to understand this, we'll just mention another verse from the Qur'an. إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران العالمين. Verily Allah, God, chose Adam and Noah and the family of Abraham and the family of Imran above all humanity. Adam, we understand now, he was the literal beginning. And Nuh alayhi salam, precisely think about this verse, وَجَعَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمُ الْبَاقِينَ, and made his, Noah's descendants, the sole survivors. Though there were others on the ark. The family of Abraham, so in the first two instances we talk about two individuals in terms of chosenness, and now it's the family of Abraham. And we say the family of Abraham, of course, we in the Islamic worldview, there's absolutely, theologically, in terms of belief, there's no distinction between, for example, Ishmael and Isaac. In terms of belief, both are prophets, and Muslims believe in all the prophets. We have 25 names in the Qur'an, believing at the same time that there are other prophets that are not mentioned by name. And for Muslims, unlike in Judaism, where the being a descendant is a descendant regardless of what you do, regardless of course, there are obligations, mitzvot, as they call them, but they made descendants a real issue. And they, even when the rabbis talk about for example, about the Palestinian issue, they see they talk about Ishmael. They just lump all the Palestinians and the Arabs, and they say, well, the Muslims, they say it's Ishmael. And it's so much so that their interpretation of the Torah, as is when Sarah asked Abraham to take away, really to take Hagar and Ishmael and just simply send them far away. And the clear reason was very clear, that the son of this woman, that meaning Ishmael, will not inherit with Isaac. So that's but the rabbis had, absolutely interpretations that are extremely problematic. One of them said he is bad influence. Uh, and some of these interpretations reached the extreme of accusing uh, Prophet Ismail alayhi salam of homosexuality, so that his mother was worried about. We don't have such stories in the Quran or the Islamic world. Yeah. Both of them are children of Abraham. It's about faith. It's not about blood. It's not about genealogy. Though once you have a genealogy and you basically believe you are a believer and you follow the law as much as possible, that's of course one should recognize this. So, for example, for us, when you talk about Ahlul Bayt, and it's not, you know, Ahlul Bayt, they are to be uh, respected. They are to be accorded their status and be, to be recognized. Um, and it is expected of them just to be to act like people of Ahlul Bayt, not to be from Ahlul Bayt and misbehave. But it's really about believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in God, in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without association. No one, nothing, or no one, you don't associate anything or anyone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you don't represent, no representation in artistic form, theologically, no representation in terms of like literal belief in literal belief in or portraying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala theologically in terms of space and time. And when you have anthropomorphic verses, or of course it's to be interpreted allegorically, like the hand of God above their hands. It's the power of God who is omnipotent. Not that God has a hand like ours. So the the story of Nuh alayhi salam, we said that, of course, in the verse, God chose Adam and Noah. We have two individuals here, two prophets. Al Ibrahim, the family of Abraham. Al Imran, that's the family of Mary, Maryam alayhi salam. And the line, if you will, of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the way until it reaches Jesus Christ and it stops there. Then it continues with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, for his Allah, Prophet Muhammad referred to himself as the son of the two sacrifices, if you will, because Ishmael was supposed to be sacrificed and not Isaac. I have dealt with this before, but briefly, in the Torah, there is God asked Abraham to offer his only son, and it is followed by the word Isaac, and in Hebrew, Yehidcha. And the rabbis realized that the word Yehidcha does not apply to Isaac, for only Ishmael was the only son for the 13 years when according to the Torah, Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old, and Isaac was born when Abraham was 99 years old. So for the duration of 13 years, Ishmael was the only son. Thereafter, after the birth of Isaac, none of them was the only son. And that's it. He has two children, two sons. Um, and the rabbis wanted to get rid of the tension between Yehidcha, your only son, and the word Isaac. And they came up with a post-revelation construct. uh, requiring basically a dialogue between God and Abraham, where God asks Abraham to offer his only son, and he responds by saying, each one of them is the only son of his mother. Yes, both of them, but you can see how now um, allowing room for the only son to become applied to Isaac by referring to the only son of his mother. The one that so God has to add more information about the only son or the meant in this verse, and he says, "The one that you love," he says, "I love both." At any rate, at the end of the dialogue, God says, "It's Isaac," but that does not really get rid of the tension. Another way of they attempt to get rid of tension by working on the etymology, like you cannot change the word Yahid Kha, your only son, but as interpretation, they just slightly changed the word rather as an interpretation from Yahid Kha to become Miyuhad, the same root in Hebrew, whereby the only son becomes the unique son. And unique you can, and they applied it to Isaac. It's Mecca rather than Jerusalem. It's Ishmael rather than uh, Isaac. And while the name in the Quran of the child, the son who was to be sacrificed, is not mentioned, we know that when the angels passed by Abraham and Sarah, of course, on their way to the people of Lot, uh, they they brought with them the news, the good news, good omen in double, that Sarah will become pregnant at an old age, and she will give birth to Isaac, and Isaac will have a son of his own, a grandchild for the parents, for Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac will have a son of his own whose name is Jacob. ومن وراء إسحاق يعقوب. This means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed and guaranteed that they will have a son and that they will have a grandchild, which means that no test could take place with this son, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guaranteed that he will live until he gets old enough to get married. Think about it. So the descendants of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, the believers, were the sole survivors. وتركنا عليه في الآخرين, and we blessed him with honorable mention among later generations. سلام على نوح في العالمين. Peace be upon Noah among all peoples. إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين. Indeed, this is how we reward the good doers. إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين, for he was truly one of our faithful servants. ثم أغرقنا الآخرين. Then we drowned the others, all those who were outside the ark, drowned, including one of the sons of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. The story of the flood is a remarkable story. First of all, scientifically, it's not that difficult. The earth was covered with water. I saw myself high mountains, and there was work. Cutting rocks to build a road, and I saw the skeleton of fish very far, so horizontally and vertically, very far from the Mediterranean. But regardless, so there was a flood, and there were stories of flood that were mentioned in ancient literature. One of the most important is the Epic of Gilgamesh. We talk about Mesopotamia, a flood. And of course, knowing how let's call it some Western scholars how they work, and of course they do not want uh, any serious recognition of revelation of the holy books, revealed books, even when they suffer from the vagaries of transmission. And they simply said that the author of the Torah simply borrowed the story of the flood from the Epic of Gilgamesh, who was literally looking for eternal life. And later on, when the Quran, of course, showed up in history, they would say the author of the Quran picked up the story from the Torah. Why not simply think like this? Those who were on the ark, I'm not talking now about Revelation, what will they do after the story, after the flood itself, once they were outside the ark and they were going to rebuild their life together? What will be the major story for them? The flood. And over the years, mythology works its way to this story, the other way around. So there was a real flood, and it's not borrowed from mythology, it's the other way around. Mythology worked on the natural story and on a real story, and as a result, we have the story of Gilgamesh. And coming from the same source, we still have. I mean, I've just read last week a paper by an Israeli Jewish author claiming that the author of the Quran picked up from the Jewish Midrash. Israeli Orientalism is way behind area studies. Kind of a state of denial, but it's not really only denial of the Quran. So it's coming from the same source. We have coming same source. What's the source? Coming from God, revelation. So some of the things will be like a Venn diagram will be common between the Torah and the Quran, like the punishment for or the gravity of homicide. He who kills one innocent, of course, person, it's as if he has killed all humanity. And he who saves one person, saves one soul, as if he saved all humanity. And the Quran says that it is mentioned in the Torah. It's not a cross reference like the author of the Quran. It is really from the same source. It's revelation. Now the Quran is very clear. When we differ about details, the upper hand is for the Quranic story. And then we'll inshallah in the next session we will deal with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the transition from the story of Noah alayhi salam to the story of Ibrahim. وَإِنَّ مِن شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. And indeed, one of those who followed his way was Abraham. And then we continue with the some details until the next session, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.